So we've talked a lot about theory and what this is and all of that good stuff, but I just want to take a bit to so everyone can kind of get to know who we are a little better, to give everyone a chance to talk about how we ended up here, like what how we got into hypnosis, how we managed to stumble into this very interesting, very rewarding profession, because we all have very, very, very different stories about how we ended up here. So, uh, speaking for myself, since I put everyone on the spot, throw myself under the bus again. So, interesting fact: before I got educated in hypnotherapy, I had zero experience with hypnosis that I was aware of, that I was cognitive of. Of course, it's very different once you learn exactly what hypnosis is. But I basically I was in a position that I was reading tarot cards professionally. And I wasn't so much reading people's fortunes, so to speak. I was using the cards as representations of psychological archetypes to be able to reframe people's problems to them, to help them work through whatever it is that they were seeking help for. And I got a very positive reception to that. I had people calling me back just to thank me, to that I helped them. And as I said before, I lived my life for a long time as a very negative person. And that was really one of my first exposures to just being kind, to just changing that mindset, changing that perception. And I very much liked it. I liked helping people. And I wanted a new way to do that. I wanted to just do that and not have to answer the "is my husband cheating on me" question 20 times a day. Oh, the answer is yes. If you ever have to ask that question, the answer is almost always yes. But, and especially if you find yourself calling a phone psychic for it, yes, answer is yes. So let me save you some $3.99 a minute. Anyway, so I I had this thought in my head. I wanted a way to do this. And of course, I can't just become a therapist or become a counselor. That is nowhere near interesting or strange enough for me.
Mhm.
So I was on Facebook one day, and the algorithm, glory to its name, uh, put a hypnotherapy college in front of me. And for those of you that don't know, and this is not an endorsement of the school, or nor is it a condemnation, we all pretty much come from the same place in terms of a school. We all come from a place called HMI College of Hypnotherapy. It is an accredited college that by the Department of Education that specializes in teaching clinical hypnotherapy. Um, Most of us, I believe, attended the 720-hour post-grad program. Some of us are going a little further than that and getting their advanced program. Jess, I believe, is the one. Hey, are you going to the? Okay. But so, as I said, I'd never heard of hypnosis before. I mean, I heard of it, but like, and I knew what a hypnotherapist was, but I'd never really given it that consideration. My only exposure to hypnosis is, and I'm looking at the book right now, it's a book from, I think, 1907 on the
Mm.
topic, which is every bit as wacky as you want it to be. But so I decided to give it a shot, to call, to see. And they said some things that interested me. And I thought, why not give it a shot? I I'm willing to see this one through. Hypnosis sounds interesting. You never know. And I think I was in class for about 2 weeks before I had my mind blown. I remember the first time I saw an arm raising, which is an induction where you make someone's arm come up off the table and touch their head without them consciously doing it. Absolutely stunned, because I have somewhat of a medical background, and I recognized like reactions, like ways that they were moving that could not be conscious. They were very reactionary twitches and movements, and it was fascinating. And then eventually, of course, I experienced hypnosis, and then I started learning things about myself through the process that changed everything. Of course, eventually I started working with people and discovered that I had an actual talent for it, and absolutely loved the depth that I was able to help people bring about change, and the change I was able to bring about in myself. And now this is, like I've said, this, I stumbled into a calling, and I've done work that was neat in the past. I've done work that made me a lot of money. uh I was a tattoo artist for many years. No one on camera has been able to tell yet. um and I was never fulfilled by it. But this work, doing, helping people in this way and in such a fascinating way, is the first time that I've actually loved what I do. And it's, and I, a lot of us feel that way. I've met many people doing this that feel like they found their calling, that are doing something for the first time that they truly connect with. And it's for the first time in a while, and or ever, really, I'm happy with myself, with who I am, with where I'm going, with the people around me. And that's what I try to bring to my clients. I found that thing that I was looking for, that way to help people more than I was. And that's what I do every day. So that's my story. Who's next?
Robert.
Well, I can go next. I started back in 1995, actually. I did
not know that.
What's that?
I did not know that.
Well, not officially, but I was a senior in high school who was doing post-secondary enrollment options at the University of Minnesota, who has a really good medical school. And I was prepping to be a neurosurgeon at that point in my life. And I was like, well, I'm going to sneak into the medical school library and just learn what I can learn and prep for going to medical school. One day I come across a book entitled Clinical Applications of Hypnosis. And I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. It's weird, but I'll try it out. Started reading pages and pages of it, and it just kind of flowed really easily for me, and it felt really cool. So then I came across the chapter on asthma. And as I'm reading this, I'm finding that my older brother, was a poster child. And I've never really told everybody the exact details, because I've said I knew somebody, but it was actually my older brother who was a poster child for asthma. And he had a lot of the symptoms and everything. So I was like, well, why don't I just try it out? I don't even know what hypnosis is. I don't even know how I'm supposed to deliver these words, but there's a script here. Like, if I can do something, anything to help him. Because at that point he was having asthma attacks like 3-4 times a day. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try it out. And without really understanding what I was doing, I was able to help him stop having attacks for 3 or 4 months. So he went from like 3 or 4 attacks a day to no attacks for 3 to 4 months. Wow. And the unfortunate thing is that we never know how effective it really would have been, because a few months after that, he fell from a bridge through some accident and didn't make it. But from that point forward, I continued to be interested in hypnosis. I wanted to get trained, but life just never worked out that way, because then I was always like, well, my parents were always like, school, school, school. And then when I graduated, they're like, well, we want to move out of the ghetto. Are you going to get us a house or something? And so then, I started working corporate, but eventually moved out to LA. And then during the pandemic, I had the rare opportunity to say, well, you know what, let's do this. Let's check out HMI. My wife was kind of arm twisting me into doing it. She scheduled the the tour, the interview, and then I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. So I signed up, and as they say, the rest is history.
It's a beautiful, powerful story. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm learning stuff today about everyone I didn't know. So there's there's that too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next. Who wants to go next?
Ladies, who would like to go?
Either way, I don't mind. So it's interesting figuring out, well, where did this actually start? Right?
Great question.
And I really feel like my whole life.
Short story or long story?
Right, exactly. I really feel like I'm going to try to do a hybrid of short story, long story. Okay. So I really feel like my whole life has kind of led up to me being here, not just here being a hypnotherapist, but here in this group with this specific room of people right here in this podcast, right? I feel like that's one of the things that I've been leading up to my whole life, right? Like this is part of what I've been like. I think a lot of us have that feeling of yearning towards something without being able to define it, right? So I have 2 sisters, and I was born in a family that was very like nuclear-y, right? Like white upper middle class, like my dad sells insurance. And so I was born not like that at all. Okay. I was that spirited kid out of all of them that they didn't know what to do with. And I had a lot of spiritual experiences pretty naturally that I understood they couldn't process. So I just kind of kept them to myself. And I always knew I wanted to do something with that. I was supposed to do something with that. And I always wanted to help people, right? So when I turned 14, my mom passed away. And this was kind of like a really young dark night of the soul for me. Okay. Because at 14 is about the age that your mind can process death as a thing, right? It's before that, it's like they're here and they're gone. But developmentally, about the age of 14 is when your brain is like, oh, I understand this on a new level. So simultaneously with that, I was on my own. And so kind of raised myself after that point, which was bittersweet because honestly, like I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't, right? So I went to college originally for chemistry because I wanted to help people, but that was definitely not the right route for me. But it's funny because I remember there being a stage hypnotist that came to the school and I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, hypnosis is gross. Like it's creepy and I hate it. And, 12 years later. But so I eventually was like, this isn't for me. I can't even. So I wasn't even sure what I was going to do, but I ended up having my first child who's now 11 and decided I was like, okay, what's the best thing I can do to be the best parent I can be? So I became a preschool teacher. And honestly, my inner hypnotherapist was there, right? Because what was I best at, right? I was known for being the best at nap time because I literally would do like a meditation, like a guided meditation for them. I was doing hypnosis, guys. Okay. And I was doing a positive guided meditation for them. Right. And they would all pass out. And then as my daughter got older, I was like, okay, I need to branch out and do more and grow more. Like I've learned a lot from this place. And with my observations about early childhood, I learned a ton about where our early like wounds come from, right? And our conditioning. And that's what I was really, really into at that point. And then moving forward a little bit, I ended up getting married and was a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids at that point. And I learned even more about stepping into that spiritual world and meditation because my ex-husband is a Kabbalistic philosopher. And I knew that there was a more positive way to use this stuff, okay? There was a healthier way. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to just dip my toe in and get some life coach training, right? Lots of people have done it, I'm aware. And so I did that, and I was like, I need more. This isn't quite enough. I know that I wanted the quickest route to helping people, not just for my experience, but for other people's experiences, right? Because I had been through years of therapy, and I knew that it takes forever. And the only reason mine didn't take so long was because of the choices I made and how I tackled it, right? And how I dove my whole self into it because I wanted to understand the process. But talk therapy can take a really long time. It can be a really important step, but I knew there was a shortcut, right? And so I'm sorry, there'll be a shortcut to this story soon. And I couldn't help it. But so at that point, right, I was separated from my ex. I was working at a DV shelter as a women's advocate, right? And I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. I found my thing. Okay. I'd been working there for about a year, and it felt like the sky fell down because it was a non-hierarchical system. It was like a bunch of feminists. It was super cool. I was so in love with that job, but it was a lot of crisis work. And what I was really good at was working in the houses with the women individually and helping them process their stuff and figure out what they wanted from their lives and where to go from here and how to not get in a situation like this again and how to put themselves first, right? I was, again, a hypnotherapist in a way. So, because a lot of these women were stuck in trance in a way, right? Because they had just escaped these traumatic situations and they were literally in hiding, right? And some of those situations were so freaking scary, man. And so I ended up kind of going into hypnosis myself, right? So it was a good thing that I was let go from there, but it felt like the sky fell down. And so I had a really long chunk of time where I was just like, what am I doing? And so I was talking to my friend who is a life coach, but also does NLP. And he was like, well, you can look into NLP. Let's look at all of the things. Let's figure this out. You want more, right? So I always knew I wanted to do NLP, which I am certified in NLP and MER, which are some really awesome and helpful modalities. But I just was like, you know what? I feel like hypnosis and hypnotherapy would be incredible to add to this. Like, I'm going to sit on that. And I sat on it for like almost just shy of a year. And I had found this college that we went to. And I literally just woke up one day and was like, it's time. Didn't talk to my current husband about it. Just signed up. My actual interview to be accepted was on my birthday. I was like, whatever, it's fine. We're going. We're doing this. I'm doing this. He came home from work one day and I was like, I'm back in school. I'm sorry. This is going to be a large commitment. And he was like, what? And thankfully was along for the ride. But that year, just like, I just, all the pieces put back together. And then I met these people and kind of like had all of them in the back of my mind, like, man, these are some really special people. And one day it was just like, hey guys, I'm going to do a mastermind. You coming? Here we are. Yep.
Here we are.
Yep. So that's that.
I met you in a practicum and we were talking shit. Remember? That was so funny.
That's how we met too. I'm pretty sure.
Why does that make so much sense?
So guys, I wanted to say real fast, and for everyone listening, this might not make sense, but it will in retrospect. We're going to run long today, so I'm going to split this into two parts. Nobody rush through anything or feel like they have to. I'm just going to split this up. So no worries. Continue.
That was me rushing through my story.
I thought that was more, Molly.
Yeah, I know. I ended it very abruptly, but basically, like, my journey is still happening, and it's just going to keep happening because that's when you fall in love with this type of work. Your journey doesn't. This isn't a destination. This isn't a destination wedding.
It's unfolding,
right? Like, it's not a destination wedding with life. it's a journey, right? Like we're just on the plane and then we get off, we have a layover, we hop back on the plane, we have to circle around because we're in a storm. Like it gets real, but we have the tools and the support, and there's no journey I'd rather be on.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now we have community
Yeah.
too, which is something we are all so passionate about sharing with our audience
Absolutely.
and expanding, because it's made all the difference in the world to, I think, every single one of us.
100%. And that's a good time to mention to anyone listening. We are trying to kind of bring everyone together here, trying to create a community. So if you hear any of us talk about anything you have questions about, if there's anything you would like to hear us answer, we will have a way to contact us. It will be in the description. I'll probably put it at the end of this episode, but 100%, always feel 100% free to reach out to us. Our metaphorical digital door is open. So,
and if
I just
you
want to say
pose, absolutely, and if you pose a question that we feel is worth discussing, we will absolutely discuss it on the show.
but we'll always
'Cause
answer no matter what.
We'll always answer it no matter what. There you go.
We're hoping to be able to answer. Like we want you to ask questions.
We want
We're
to.
excited because we're here for you, right?
Yeah.
So,
Like-
so on that note, two things are really important here, right? With all of this, take what serves you, leave behind the rest. You still need to be the pilot in your own pulpit. You can't hand it over to anybody else, because at the end of the day, you're the only person with you all the time.
That
And-
seems like a good segue to introducing yourself and
okay.
saying how you got here.
Well, on that note too, I really have to say, I think there's quite a depravity of resources available to people to support themselves in really becoming their best selves. And when you become, when at least you begin on the endeavor of living a life worth living, you're not only doing that for yourself, but you're actually doing that for your community. The people around you, the lives of the people around you get better when your life gets better. So
Absolutely.
even if it's, I was once in a place, and that is a good segue, J. Rob, thank you. I was once in a place where I wasn't sure that my life was worth saving. And I think probably that's not unfamiliar territory to everybody here. And so here's my story. I grew up to the parents of two PhD biologists, and so dinner table discussions were very scientific. I learned critical thinking very early. And I love my parents, and we have a wonderful relationship today. And I wish them safety on their vacation they're on, just embarking on this morning. But at the end of the day, they were focused on economic security for our household. And I didn't have a mentorship relationship with really either of my parents. And that's all fine and dandy, but I really, really valued science. I was trained essentially that, truth is truth, and hippy dippy stuff is other, whatever, And what's interesting, simultaneous to that, my mom is a co-founder of the Middle East Peace Camp for Arab and Jewish children in Seattle, Washington. And that's been going on for, I think, 14 years now. And so I grew up with this kind of dual experience. One experience was the very scientific discussions around the dinner table, systems biology, stuff like that. And then another was the activism that I supported my mother with, right? And I became a camp counselor, and it helped me learn how to work with children. And that was all very interesting. So I went through high school, and I had a key decision to make. I took AP Bio and I took AP Physics at the same time. And I'm like, let's see what I like. And Bio was a whole bunch of memorization. I'm like, well, that's stupid. And then Physics actually taught me how to understand the world. And so I'm like, well, that's cool. So I went from there and applied to engineering programs just UCs because living in California. And I went to UC Irvine for mechanical engineering. And I think it's significant to mention during 3 years of my time at UC Irvine, I was with one person, and she needed support from me, or she felt she needed support in terms of me being very stable so that she could essentially go through her dark night of the soul and find herself on the other side. And so I took it as a sort of virtue that I would stay the same. And at the end of my junior year, I was all set to go back up to Seattle and have an internship there and live with her again for the summer. And essentially, she was bored with the relationship and she found someone else, right? And that rocked my world. I had no means to cope with that reality, and I had no sense of self as well. And so that was a very exploratory summer for me. And it broke open a lot of stuff. You know, I was 21 years old. I tried marijuana for the first time. I had this boundary dissolving experience, right? And for all of the stagnancy that I had kept inside me for the previous 3 years, all of that sort of chaos and exploration opened up. And I was a wild person in a way. And nonetheless, I finished my degree, I went into the workforce, and I still had this very idealistic version of what I thought the reality was. And so I went into the engineering world, and I'm like, whoa, like, we're not all working together towards our mutual goals here. Like, what? Like, shouldn't we all collaborate? Oh, you mean you don't work with the manufacturing people because they're different than you and you think you know better, and there's like tremendous ego involved, and you're not at all willing to acknowledge that or work with that? Whoa, like, it was shocking to me. And I actually got that job because of my next 3-year relationship, which was turned out to be a very toxic relationship at the end of the day. It was mutually abusive and it was traumatizing. And she was somebody who had been trafficked, and I helped her get out of that. And as a result, I also incurred a lot of secondary trauma from that. And, and any hypnotherapist will understand that when subconscious minds merge, you share models of reality and you share a lot. And so I really did take on a lot of trauma from that experience. And frankly, I also chose it because I knew that I didn't understand the world. And I knew that I needed to understand how fucked up things can be. And then how to walk back from that. And so I started, as that relationship ended, I started to look for something. Okay, here I am. Who has answers? I went to 3 different psychotherapists. It was like, okay, it's nice to talk. I feel heard. I feel listened to, but that was the extent of it. And I'm like, what the heck? And I was just depressed and stuck. And I was kind of like a lion backed into a corner. It was a little scary for my parents to be around me because I moved back in with them. And like J. Rob, I got an advert on Instagram for this weird college called HMI College, whatever that thing is, right? And I'm like, all right, well, got nothing to lose. So I booked a call and I spoke with a Mr. Mario Pescatori, and he let me know that he was having a rough time before he found HMI as well. And he let me know that HMI provided him with a large toolbox to live the life that he really wanted to live. And that blew out of the water every other conversation I'd ever had as far as self-empowerment. So I enrolled, and I was terribly impatient because I'm like, I thought you guys were going to fix me. I ain't fixed. I ain't even close. but nonetheless, I kept the course, and eventually things started to get better. And simultaneous to that, in the past year, especially prior to enrolling, I was having a series of spiritual experiences that I just did not know how to process. And we won't go into all those because it's far too much, but, needless to say, like, I just was like, okay, well, this weird thing happened, and I just don't have a means to understand that. And so I ended up meeting my partner, Krista, who is a psychic and a voice channeler. And in communicating with her, she showed me that all that I was experiencing is actually very normal for those who are open to it. And because I was opening myself to it, I was experiencing it. And it actually all made a lot of sense. And so for the first time in my life, I gained a model of reality that was actually usable, that I could actually navigate with. And that led me to this group as well. And frankly, I'm honored to be here because this is the start of something good. And I see this group building resources and building understanding that the world is desperately in need of, because the level of not self is incredible. The level of ourselves essentially raping ourselves or pillaging ourselves, right? Everybody's so terribly sovereignty pillaged. We're pillaged from our own sovereignty in all these different ways. We think we need to be this kind of person in order to simply be safe. And all of this journey also led me to be a human design reader. And I find that to be incredibly useful as well. So that's in essence my story. As I'm sure is true with all of you, there's plenty more to share, but I think it's either Jess or Renee next.
I want to touch on something you said, though, that makes a lot of sense, that I think we can all kind of connect with, and that it gave us a way to navigate the world that we understood. And that's really one of the big things that changed myself. And one of the things that I hope to, if not bring people with this show, to at least give people the resources and direction to find that direction themselves. And I've been intensely lost my whole life. I think a lot of us can speak to that. So much, I've got it tattooed on me somewhere. And somewhere. But I don't feel lost anymore. And I don't feel like anyone in this group feels lost anymore. Even if we haven't found where we're going, we know where we're going. We at least know the direction. And a lot of people out there listening right now don't have that. And I really hope, and the purpose with having us all share these things is in hopes that somebody out there hears something familiar, that somebody out there is able to, and one of us or all of us or a couple of us or whoever, hear something of their own story and realize that they can't, that other people have been through what they've been through or something similar and found different and found better. And as Callum said, it kind of put voice to something that I wasn't sure about with my own past. The whole concept of I wasn't sure if my life was one of those worth saving. And I don't have that doubt anymore. And I look back at that doubt a lot because it makes me understand where a lot of people come from. So, anyway, who's next on our little thieves row?
Wally has some.
Well, I just wanted to add in these words, okay? Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
That it really summarizes, I think, so we've all had these collaborative experiences that were very similar in the sense of we had a lot of rough roads to drive down, right? And then we all found hope in becoming hypnotherapists, and the tools that we learned helped us grow. And then we found this group, and it was like coming home. And we want that feeling for other people. And that's the whole point of this podcast, right? Is to bring that community, that collaboration, that feeling of home that many people, like I didn't feel for the first time until I was in at least my mid-20s, you know? And that's what we just want to share.
Thank you.
I'll go. So I was born into a Catholic family, and I went to Catholic school, and it was really hard for me because I, at a very young age, was able to communicate with spirits and people who had passed on. So I was seeing ghosts and having all of these experiences, and my parents were very emotionally unavailable. My mom was a drug addict, and she did end up leaving us when I was about 9. So we were, living with my dad, who worked all the time and just didn't really have time to be there for us. And he thought I was, imagining things and yada yada, like most parents do when their kids say these kinds of things to them. So as I grew up, my dad remarried, and my stepmom and I, we have kind of a good relationship now, but we didn't when I was a child. And because my biological mom was an addict, I was the oldest. So I played mom, so I took care of the house and the kids, and I witnessed a lot of domestic violence. She ended up leaving my dad and going, marrying a drug dealer, and bringing me into situations where I'm very surprised I didn't end up being killed. And my dad was really protective, though, because he didn't want me to end up like my mom. And I ended up not really being taught about sex, or being taught how to protect myself, or being taught about the real world. I was, it was like he wanted to keep me caged up and just protect me, his oldest daughter. And he thought he was doing the best for me, obviously, but I ended up getting pregnant at 17. So, and I was so brainwashed by religion at that time that I thought I had to marry this guy or I would go to hell and, burn for an eternity. And even though I knew it wasn't the right thing, I did it anyway because of this programming that I had been born into. And I tried to leave him, ended up getting pregnant again. It was like just a universal thing. I mean, it was one time we got back together and I got pregnant. So I know that my son was meant to be here. And I eventually started being abused by him consistently. And it got to the point where I had to join the military, actually, to save my family, like to save myself and my kids. So I joined the military, ended up moving to Montana, of all places, and in my trauma, got married again 6 months later. Life path 5 over here. So got remarried, and he was not good for me. The military, I had a lot of very bad experiences in the military as well. I was sexually assaulted by one of my coworkers who was also an airman, and ended up getting impregnated and had to get an abortion. And I was going through so much, and I was with this guy. We were married, and he started cheating on me constantly. I started picking up alcohol, and ended up having a baby, and I was sober while I was pregnant. But as soon as my baby was born and he was old enough, I picked the wine back up, and I ended up developing all of these like chronic illnesses, like severe chronic pain. I was in the hospital all the time. I was on so many prescriptions. I had depression, anxiety, I was suicidal, and I just drank my feelings away. I ended up getting medically discharged, and continued my life of alcoholism. I was still a good, I was still, I didn't drink when my kids were awake. I waited till they went to sleep. I wasn't the mom drinking in the morning with my coffee or anything, but I kept meeting these really abusive men, and it kept happening over and over. And I met the second husband, or the third husband, sorry. And it was very intense. And I know now it was like a past life connection, and that's why it was so intense. And at that time I had started stripping as an exotic dancer, and I was still actively an addict. The dancing is not what made me pick up alcohol. It was just everything else going on in my life. And I ended up dancing for about 4 years. And in the beginning, it became a very spiritual experience for me. And I was so angry at God, if you could say that, for all of the things that had happened to me. And, just never feeling loved or accepted, or my dad always pushing this idea of perfection on me, that I had to be a certain way to be loved, that I had to achieve this to be worthy of love. So I was always going after these men that would criticize me and put me down. Even though I wasn't doing it consciously, I was like attracting, my father. I was attracting my father. So dancing for me, it was very empowering. I mean, it helped me feel in control of myself and in control of my body and in control of my life. And I was able, I could tell someone no. And if they touched me, I could get them kicked out. And, I could be myself, to pretend to be somebody to be loved. I didn't have to put on this facade that I was a Christian or that I wasn't a dancer. I could just be who I wanted to be. And I ended up having a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And my life completely changed after that. I went from being an atheist to seeing, if you could call it God, seeing this giant being in the sky appearing to me, holding this vortex of energy, and this energy just kind of spread all over the sky. And I started seeing all of my past lives and all of the things I've done and everyone who I've ever been. And all of this just started unfolding for me. And I ended up getting into, Reiki healing and oracle cards, tarot cards, meditation. And I ended up getting off all of my prescription drugs, everything. I completely flipped my life around. I was still drinking, I will say that, but it wasn't as bad as it was. And I wasn't really using it to cope at that time. And as it started unfolding, I started having even more like strange experiences that completely changed my perception of reality. And I realized like I am a God fractal and that I can create anything I want. And is so much more to the world than we are being told. And that just, I always knew that as a child, obviously being a psychic medium, but finally having it, like, wow, ETs are real. Like there are beings in other dimensions, all of this stuff. And it literally just gave me peace, because as a child, I was always the weird kid talking about witches and werewolves and vampires and like, fairies and stuff. And I'm like, wow, like it makes sense why this has always resonated with me so much. And I was still in that abusive relationship at the time as well. But my connection with the universe and with my spirit guides and my galactic family, I mean, they are beings from another place that I know. I mean, we've been together for a very long time, and they helped me and gave me information and, like guided me, like, this is what you need to do. This is how you can do this, giving me a nudge here, a nudge there. And I ended up listening to Dolores Cannon, and I was still in this abusive relationship, but I was kind of becoming more of an observer in it. It was very volatile, so it was hard for me to get out of that situation. And I was just kind of making the best of the life that I had. And I ended up getting my child taken away from me. The second husband, he was very abusive. And he wanted to get back together with me. And I said no. So he kind of used his family as a way to get back at me. They had a lot of money. And sorry. I haven't had him for 4 years now. And they just kind of, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the legal community that people don't realize. and they were pretty much able to steal my child from me. And I live very far away from him, so I'm only able to see him about once a year. So that happened. And, I'm progressing spiritually. I'm learning so many things. I'm learning about my soul and who I am, and I'm healing. And then my husband tried to kill me. And he ended up eventually, he went to prison, a jail for a few months. And as our subconscious minds, trick us into thinking that something is good for us, even though it isn't, I got back with him, in my pain of losing my son. And it was about the beginning of 2020 pandemic. I had a very major spiritual experience, and it was like I changed into a different person, like more than just a regular spiritual awakening. I mean, overnight, I was able to quit smoking cigarettes. I quit drugs. I quit alcohol. I mean, it was like I completely changed into a new person, the person that was healthy and happy. And, I met my current partner, and, it's kind of just been helping me realize, like, I have been repeating these cycles over and over and over and over, and it's been happening lifetime after lifetime. And it's happening to my mom, and it happened to her mom. We've all been these victims of life and of programming. And the beginning of 2020, so I started researching Dolores Cannon, and she has quantum hypnosis training, where it's a school that she created focusing mainly on hypnosis and your higher self. So it was kind of expensive, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. Just because I was in that program, like, I don't have enough money to pay for this. And that's a poverty blockage that we have, where we think, like, if we spend this money, we're not going to make it back, So I ended up scripting that year, like, I want to go to hypnosis school. I want to start, a spiritual business. I want to create a podcast. I want to start writing, creatively. And at that time I got pregnant and ended up retiring from the club and moved to this really small town. I mean, this town, the most Western town you could have ever seen in your life. I mean, and I've been kind of in hermit mode, learning and studying. And it was last summer. I don't even remember exactly. I just Googled hypnotherapy, and I think I was literally looking up Dolores Cannon's program, but HMI was the first thing that popped up. And it was stating, like, we've just released online classes, you don't have to live in LA to go to school anymore. So being a veteran, I have my GI Bill, and it covered 100% of everything. I'm like, okay, this is crazy, and they paid me like $2,000 to go to school. So I got my Reiki certification, and, I've been channeling and doing all of these, like, I do psychic work in the grids of the earth. I help anchor in, like, Christ consciousness into the earth, unity consciousness. And this school has kind of helped me. It's brought all these people into my life. Like, I have met so many people that I know I have, they're in my soul group. They came here to change the world with me. And I went from having, never feeling loved or having acceptance, to finally, even though we're not blood family, I still feel like I have a family now that I never felt like I had before. And, my situation with my family, it's not much better. I'm seen as the black sheep, the one that is testing, doesn't believe their religion, and, you're covered in tattoos, and she's a stripper and all of this stuff. So I've kind of distanced myself from that, because even though they're my blood family, we don't deserve to be treated that way. If someone can't love you and accept you for who you are, they don't deserve to be in your life, even if you're related. We have to, like, remember that, because we allow these toxic situations to play out and we don't put our foot down and set boundaries. Like even your family, they need boundaries too. And I had another baby, and he ended up being born as the same zodiac sign as me, and we've had so many like strange experiences together. So I know he came here too. Like all of my kids did, and this baby just kind of is like what I needed, I guess. He helped me finally break free from those like abusive addiction cycles, and now I'm in a place where I've been sober for 2 years, and I really just want to help people integrate all of the things, because these are all things. It was like I was playing out like lifetimes of karma all in one lifetime, and I was doing it for my bloodline, for my generation, for my family. And it was all the stuff they couldn't transmute, all the stuff they couldn't or haven't or refused to. I did all of that, and it's going to help my children. But it's also, it's we're all collectively connected. We're all connected to the same energy. So it's healing my family too. Even if they can't feel it right now, they will. The more that I heal, the more that they will heal. And it may not happen in this lifetime, but I at least know, their souls will be at peace because I worked through that. And I've been in meeting everybody that I could have ever imagined. Like the kind of people I'm meeting, I didn't even think I could meet people like this, because I've always been the weirdo, the outcast, like I'm covered in Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings tattoos. Like I'm always about like fantasy and dragons and shit. Like, and I'm finally at a place now where I'm like happy, and I know, I still have things going on in my life. We all do, but it's a cycle, A dark night of the soul can happen many, many times, and they might be short or they might be long. It all depends on what you've learned, and if you can remember how to apply it in this situation. It's literally like a test of what you know. Like, can you maintain your vibration when this is happening to you? And I've been through a lot of stuff that I feel like because of that, I can really help people with their shadow work, with healing their guilt, their shame, their pain, and all of that stuff. I mean, it's so connected as well to, the sexual empowerment that I'm really connected to, because when we're feeling that guilt or shame, I mean, it affects your sexual centers, it affects your creativity, your ability to create. If that's blocked, I mean, pretty much everything's blocked. You're not going to be able to create anything. You're going to, go in and try to paint something and nothing will come, or try to write something and you don't know what to say. And and I finally started writing fiction. It's like fiction kind of loosely based on my own psychic experiences that I say is fiction, but it's mostly real. And that's something I always wanted to do. Something I always wanted to do as a kid. And I'm kind of, now I know I want to publish books, and I am fine. It's like I always knew I was magic as a child, but no one would ever like acknowledge it, But I was able to it was like I was able to keep that veil off my face, even though everybody told me I was crazy or didn't believe me or thought something was wrong. I could still see that and experience that. So it's been awesome, because so many people, when they have these experiences with their families, they lose their imaginations, they lose their, your third eye is wide open when you're born, and over time it calcifies and it just kind of closes off. That never happened to me. And I just thought it was been so magical that, even though all these really horrible things have happened to me, I've always had my spirit team there, like my guides, my family, my higher self, always there with me, and everything always does work out. And even if it doesn't make sense to me right now, I know that it was for my highest good, because if all of those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here right now. If I hadn't even have lost my son, I wouldn't be in Montana anymore, and I wouldn't have had my baby. So it's like everything, even those bad things, if you really look at it, like if that didn't happen, where would you be? Would you be, would you have met the same people? Would you be in the same situation, like the one that you're happy with right now, the one that you feel complete in? So yeah, that's my story. And I just really want to help people integrate all of their selves, and that includes the selves that we can't remember, you know, the ones from our past, the ones where you were burned for being a witch, or, you know, persecuted for making herbal remedies in your kitchen. Like, there's so many things, and we are carrying that trauma in our bodies. We're carrying it with us in this lifetime. And if you don't integrate that stuff and heal that, it's like, that is so important. It's going to keep manifesting somewhere in your life until you heal it and accept it and integrate it. And it's not about denying that part of yourself. It's about accepting and loving part of yourself, loving that dark part, that shadow, and hugging her and telling her it's okay. And, you know, denying the shadow, you know, in this new light working thing that's going on right now, that's blowing up. It's like everything light, light, light. Like, light is awesome, but darkness has a place too. And without darkness, how would we grow? You know,
Absolutely.
So that's my story.
Thank you, Renee. Hey, you brought up a really good question there that I think we should think about addressing next time. Really important question. When was the first time you saw God in drag?
Okay, so
also important to clarify, if there's a point in time where we all look like assholes.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. So if during Renee's heartfelt
all right.
Message, Callum
Renee's
decides
like crying and all these guys are laughing like assholes.
Callum put something in the chat that we all have going on about when was the first time you saw God in drag. So if you see everyone covering their mouth during this heartfelt thing, it's because Callum.
It's not because Callum's an asshole either. It was in response to a question.
Yes,
about
I've integrated my inner
year
asshole
for all of us.
Molly,
yes.
I have integrated my inner asshole.
Right.
My relationship with my asshole is great. Thank you very much.
And that's a valid question to kind of bring up to the audience, because it's one that I asked the group, because Renee said something about in 2020, and for myself, that's when it occurred. And I become very curious how many people, and if you're out there listening and you had this pivotal point in 2020, reach out to us, tell us about it. Absolutely. Again, there'll be ways to reach out to us in whatever description it is that you find this, and I'll, at the end of this episode, give everyone a way to reach out to us. But
and I just want to say before we move on to Jess, thank you for sharing that, Renee. I think it's very resonant with a lot of people. Frankly, I've heard multiple stories of women who, you know, their husbands have families and have their children taken away. And I think it's very resonant for a lot of people. And I know that everybody in this group has experienced their own version of loss.
Absolutely. And Renee asked before the show, like, how much should I share? Like, is that okay? And it's important. We all encouraged her to share who she is, where she's been, what she's done, all of herself. And we all intend to bring that honesty, because somebody out there needs to hear everything. Somebody out there needs to hear what each of us has to say. Exactly.
It doesn't matter how dark it's been. It doesn't matter where you are in life. It doesn't matter what you're fucking going through, right?
You're turning around.
There is a way to get to inner peace.
Yes. And for myself, and Renee kind of mentioned something like this, I don't have the best past. I haven't done the best things. I haven't been the nicest person. And becoming this, who I am, I had to decide what to do with that. And at first, the first instincts to reject it, but then I realized there was no other choice than to be grateful for it. That if I'm happy right now, if I believe I've found my calling and I am truly, truly happy, how can I, or any of us, possibly regret anything that's happened? Because it's put us in this position that we can be who we are now. And so anyone listening, that it doesn't matter who or what you've been, that's not what you are. And however you choose to live the rest of your life can be your choice, and you can turn it around. And it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter who you've been. You use that to bring you to a point that you want to be. And when you've come to where you want to be, you can look back at who you've been and realize that was all to learn and all made you who you are when you come to the end of that path. And speaking for myself, not to speak for anyone else, it was worth it. Everything I've been through, everything I've lost, it was all worth it. I can't even think about it the same as I used to, because I cannot regret or take back a single thing that I've done, no matter what it's cost me, because I'm here right now with all you guys, speaking to you all, and that's worth it. And if that's worth it, it was all worth it. So don't think that you can't. Don't think it's too late. Don't think that there's no hope, because every single one of us here, I'm pretty sure, has been convinced there's no hope, has been convinced that we are irredeemably lost in some fashion.
Struggled with shame,
Struggled
whether
with
it was
shame,
our own or
guilt.
imposed on us. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And that path is, I want to be very clear, it's ugly. It can be very ugly for a while, but know that that's not a sign you're on the wrong path, right? That's not a way to tell. It's not just like you wake up one morning perfectly happy and it's fine because you made the choice. It's a process, right? But it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Well, we're not, most of us, sorry, Callum.
Well, it's your turn. Go for it.
Most of us are brought up learning how to process pain.
Yeah.
Emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, all of it. We resist it. We resist it. And the more we resist it, the more painful it is to process. Right? And I just that kind of feels like a standalone, but I just want to have grace for myself and for everyone else who is experiencing that you can learn to allow it and it gets easier. And it's a teacher, right? It brings you even that, like Molly Lou was talking about, coming home to yourself. All of this is like coming home to yourself. And once you're home with yourself, you find your community and learning how to process your emotions, especially the pain. It brings you even more into your own truth. And once you can see it that way, that reframe of this pain is telling me something about myself. This pain is bringing me to what's most true and important, and the love. The pain brings you to the love. And once you can reframe it that way and recognize that, it's such a sigh of relief. And it starts unfolding with more ease. So it doesn't have to be a negative.
Absolutely. 100%.
And I guess I wanted to, if I may, jump in before you talk about yourself, Jess. Reiterate that a lot of times we endure that pain because it is something that makes us better for the destiny that is ahead of us. Because my wife and I grew up in the same city. Our families moved to different areas or different neighborhoods in the city. And a lot of times we're in pretty much the same neighborhoods, never ran into each other, had all the same friends, never knew each other. And it wasn't until I moved to LA and she moved to Sacramento that we were introduced. And even then, when we were introduced, it didn't work. It wasn't until 2 years later that we reconnected. But if we were to look back on our relation, on all that time when we could have connected and started our family a lot earlier and not be old and struggling with waking up every 2 hours to have kids, to feed the kids. Had we officially met and tried to have a relationship at that time, it wouldn't have worked because we needed to go through the struggles that we went through in order to respect and love each other the way that we do now. And had I not experienced the things that I did, I probably wouldn't have given her the time of day, because she says that we haven't met before a couple times, which I don't even remember. And it was just like, pew.
I'll edit that out for you. Don't worry.
That's
no,
so
she knows that.
good.
She
No,
knows
it's
that.
important.
That's
Yeah.
my
I was
husband
joking.
and I's almost exact same thing. So I didn't know that about you two, and I know both of you. So that's wild because we grew up in the same town. I knew his brother. I knew his name briefly because we had a lot of the same friends, but we didn't meet until like way later. And he did not have a clue who I was, even though we had talked briefly like once or twice before. He didn't remember me at all. And I was like, that's fine. I'll remember for both of us. Like, I don't know. But yeah.
Well, what matters is, you know, in the end, you won, right? You might not remember, but at the end, you're the winner. You're the one that, you know, is spending the rest of your life with them.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I mean, that being said, like, had we not experienced all of the things that we did, she would not have been willing and able to see me the way that she sees me now, to see the value within me, you know? So a lot of times when we go through something bad, it's painful and we're like, oh my God, I hate this and I don't want to feel this pain. But if you walk away from that and you say, okay, so what is this pain really trying to teach me? And how can I grow from it? It actually ends up being something very good and very positive for you. Even the really horrible, traumatic, dark things that sometimes some people can't walk away from, and it takes them. But if you can separate from that and say, this has been introduced into my life. And there's the belief that a lot of times, you know, right before we enter this life, the soul decides the challenges that we want to endure to learn and grow from it. So if we think about that and we say, well, what did our soul really want to learn from this so that we can transcend to the next level? That'll really help guide us through the painful thing that we're going through right now.
And you never know when life is going to surprise you too. That's the other thing that really like resonated from what you're saying, right? Like I had a terrible, like really dark marriage literally right before Pat and I got together, my husband. And it's just like, that's like our relationship is very peaceful, generally speaking, outside of, you know, being human, right? It's very safe for the first time. And you just never know when suddenly something's just going to pop up and be like, I'm ready for you. If you just keep trying to do that work, it'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or a point of perspective, you're finally ready for me too. So
valid. Exactly.
Absolutely. All right, Jess, dodge the bullet long enough.
I'm honored to be a part of this group, and in awe of all of you being so vulnerable, sharing your truth and just opening your hearts to me and to each other and to our audience. And I've been sitting here with the question of like, what is most useful for me to share? How can I bring to the table what needs to be heard? And I thank you guys for going before me, because it's reminded me of how how universal it is that we all have been conditioned, and sometimes just in those first 8 years, but many of us, it goes on, and it's that like law of repetition. It just keeps coming at us. The conditioning to hide parts of ourselves. And it starts very early for most of us. And it can be really subtle, or it can be really in your face. And I think that is one of the core values that is bringing us together is this desire to create a space and a community for people who have felt like there is a part of themselves or multiple parts of themselves that they have had to mask, had to suppress, that homeostasis required. There was not, that if I show all of myself, I'll be kicked out of my tribe or my family or my community. That if I show this one part, maybe I can show everything, but just this one part's a little too much. And like most of you, I've experienced that also. And I've justified that, look, I have all this privilege. I'm okay. Like there's so much that I've got handed to me and going for me that it's okay. It's okay. Like that's just one little part. It's okay. But I hope that this forum can give each of us on the podcast and to the listeners an opportunity to allow all of our parts to be seen and heard and given grace and nurturing and acceptance, maybe for the first time. That may seem like a tall order, but I think we're all here for it. What led me to hypnotherapy? Like many of you said, like, where do we start, right? Where do we start? From a very young age, I think I had a negativity bias, bringing it back to that, of seeing people's pain. Seeing people around me in physical pain, in emotional pain, noticing what they were doing to cope, noticing how it affected their behavior, not understanding why one person could have willpower over something and another person couldn't, not understanding how each person couldn't see their own power and gifts and amazingness, how they limited themselves, and also feeling very alone and on the outside myself. So all of that naturally led me to being drawn to what makes people tick, learning about psychology, learning about all forms of wellness. I was a licensed massage therapist for a time and learned so much wonderful knowledge and experiencing the impacts of body work and how important that is. And that forever changed my perspective of someone who's been predominantly in her head or in the clouds. Then I had this experience of what it's like to connect with your body. And as Renee said, the dance, the being in your body can bring about such healing in ways we never expected and connect you to yourself in multiple layers and ways, and to be and beyond, not just to yourself, but to the collective and spiritual realms. And then I spent most of my adulthood raising my kids and putting everything into being responsible for their mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being. And I never learned that didn't have to be at the expense of my own. And so I had to go through those trials of like learning the stubborn hard way of like going, and then being taken out of commission because you won't give yourself a break, right? You won't see the value in your own healing. And that happened to me in multiple ways. And I can relate to the playing out things through relationships that weren't healthy and showing up in ways that weren't healthy, and I had a couple of awakenings, a few awakenings along the way. I realized, hey, like I want to pursue something more fun, more meaningful, career-wise, and finally recognizing this is beneficial to everyone in my life. That's not selfish, that's self-full, that's adding to the group. And but I was still shoulding, like a lot of us do, shoulding all over myself. I was still doing it within the confines of my programming, of what I thought was possible for me, what I thought, just one aspect of myself, playing out just one aspect of myself. And all along I'd been neglecting my own healing from past trauma. And I started having serious panic attacks that presented with symptoms ranging from feeling like a heart attack to feeling like a stroke. And as anybody who's been through major health crises can attest, that like will take you out when you've been refusing to give yourself attention, that it can manifest in physical ways, like to demand your attention. And that was my experience more than once, that my body required me to attend to myself in ways that I was refusing to. Because I'd always been the strong one for everyone else. And that was this role I was playing. And that in my conditioning, in my knowns, strong didn't include self-nurturing and care and taking a step away or to the side, or so that was a learning process. And in that learning process, I found cognitive mindset work that helped me start to retrain my thoughts, differentiate my thoughts from my feelings, helped me quit relying on the coping mechanisms that I had been relying on that were not healthy for me. And I found so much value from that. I decided that I wanted to get into coaching. And with my health background, my wellness background, I decided to go get a certification in health coaching. And what I was finding was that the nutrition was great, and learning cognitive work was great, but there was still this wall that myself and people I was working with would come up against, that it only got us so far. And there was a deeper layer that needed to be addressed. And I was exploring, what is that? What is that? Like, how do we get to that deeper layer? How do we get that next step of this was this reoccurring pattern I'd been seeing all my life, that like willpower, like getting you so far, but then having a regression or not being able to get further, even though you really desperately wanted something so badly, wanted the healing, wanted the success, whatever it was. And I think what I stumbled across was EFT, emotional freedom technique tapping. And I was like, okay, this brings in the body, you're tapping on these energy points. I had experienced the positive effects of acupuncture many times in my life. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. So I started looking around for that and training in that. And that's when I found HMI. And I was like, oh, wait. They teach that and all of these other modalities that connect the cognitive, the body. They open the space for spiritual and like exploration. And I didn't think about it for very long. Like a lot of you, I was just like, oh yeah, that's it. And being during the pandemic and the shift to online and the ability to get student loans and financial aid because it's accredited, these opportunities, that's another thing we don't think about a lot when we've talked. Many of you have mentioned access to information, access to resources and healing. We're fortunate to have that access to this education and in the format that we were. And I think, the timing of it all is significant. And yeah, as soon as I got in, within a month, there was no looking back. I knew this is opening all the doors to anything's possible then. Once you have these tools to access your subconscious, embody the change that you want, because hypnosis helps us bring it in to our body to experience it through all of our sensations. That tool opens the door to pursue any calling, right? Because we can use it to support ourselves on whatever our journey is. And that's why I knew there was no looking back. And I think all of us feel that way, that like we're here to help other people have the tools to do the same for themselves, to empower them to come home to themselves, to like be accepting of themselves and be in a community that accepts them for all of who they are, because we all play this important role in the collective. And if we're allowing to be all of ourselves, and that's when all the magic really happens. And I just feel so honored to be a part of it.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yes, I gotta say, you broke my heart open like 3 times there.
Like, when she speaks, it's just, I just listen. Like, I literally can't help myself but to fully. And if anybody's watching these videos and sees occasionally us looking distracted, it's because we're messaging each other about how amazing each other are. Like, literally, that's what we're doing. We are fully present, and we're so present that we need to like.
I do feel the need to say, this is not an endorsement of the Hypnosis Motivation Institute or any of its instructors until such time as they pay us. We just all happen to have gone there. We are not paid to endorse or anything like that. It's just
Neither are we in working for them.
No, we are not employed by or
All right,
necessarily affiliated with.
gentlemen. All right. But I think
We need to put that out there. Make sure that
You
there's
need to toss that out there, though.
all right.
Yes.
But I feel like Jess and then Molly's comment after helps us understand why this is the HypnoDivergence podcast.
Yes.
Because regardless of who you are, you can employ tools to help you be your whole self and not leave any part of you behind.
And that's why we brought all of us together for this. That we decided that it wasn't going to serve as just one of us or two of us, that it had to be all of us, that we needed a divergence, as it was, of opinions, perspectives, experiences, because we could speak to you all listening all the better, rather than just having one of us that you could have this understanding through. And this was all unintentional. I did not mean to have this run so long or split this into 2 episodes. So we'll work on that transition in post. Always just remember, you get it in post.
But are we surprised it went on this long?
No, not in the slightest.
Whenever we like originally we had, I was like, oh, I'll allot us an hour and a half.
That didn't work.
3 hours later.
Yeah. So our plan today was just to record the first episode. So there was no pressure, but
and yet we've generated a special on
we have generated a special.
Cast.
Yep. Well,
and this was what I just also want to say, this is a very somber side of us. But,
yeah, it's going to be way more jokey from this point
forward. Okay.
This specific
real
episode,
personality hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, this is just the who we are, what we do. We haven't started with the crass jokes yet. That's coming. Episode 3. Don't worry.
Bad jokes are coming.
Yeah, the bad jokes are coming.
Inevitable.
But
there's no stopping.
So I'm gonna wrap this up now. What turned out to be episode 2. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, for listening again. And if you have any questions for us individually or for the group, please send them to hypnodivergence@gmail.com. And we do have a website, hypnodivergence.com. It might still be under construction by the time you listen to this, or it could be up. So go check it out either way. But we will have links in the descriptions to be able to view all of our individual sites. We will have ways to get a hold of us if you have any questions. And again, I want to emphasize, any questions you have, any comments, observations, whatever have you, shoot us an email. We will always answer your questions. We might even answer them on a show if we believe it's something that people need to hear, that it will resonate with a lot of people. So please ask away, ask any question you want. So
could we make one distinction here?
What's that?
In the sense that if it's more like directed at one person, maybe if they wanted to and didn't feel comfortable sending it to the group, they could use our website links to.
Yes, we will all have our website links or contact information in the description separately.
And if it's more general question, that they send it to the HypnoDivergence email, so we can all, be
yes,
we all know that that's there and we can all respond to it.
Absolutely.
And we all know that it's like the whole point of this is there's likely going to be like 1 or 2 people that resonate way more with you, right? And like we love that. We're here for that. We're totally open for that. And that's part of this, right? Yeah. So whatever you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. If you have a question for one of us specifically, if you have a question you want one of us specifically to answer, let us know. Communicate. We are here as a service. We are all very busy, but we all want to take the time to do this for the community, to make that community. And so before I wrap up, is there anything anyone else wanted to add?
Just thank you.
Absolutely.
I do have something to say, but not for the podcast. But
okay. Well, cool. Well, It was a pleasure hanging out with all you guys. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And just remember, it's like Dr. Seuss says, you got to be odd to be number one. See you next time.
Cheers.